is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to Vintage RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable. He told me he has a painting that he can never gaze upon, but it definitely wasn't done by Tyler Vance, Stu Horvath.
Yeah, we don't talk about that other painting. Jeez, come on, Hambone.
That's why you built a loft with a garage. You've been far away from prying eyes.
Yes.
We do have a cool guest on the show today, friend of the pod, Tyler Vance is here to talk about his latest Kickstarter, Void the Frontier. It's a competitive card game for 2 to 6 players, and each card features the extremely cool, extremely interesting, darkly unique painting styles of Tyler Vance. Tyler, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you guys doing tonight?
Hanging in there. It's all good.
Yeah.
So this is actually Hambone misspoke. This is your first Kickstarter, correct?
It is. Yeah, it's my first one. Yes, my first rodeo.
How's that going?
Well,
tell us all the emotional ups and downs.
Yeah,
the whirlwind of
it is. Yeah, it's. I do feel like I'm, in a submarine trying to map out the ocean floor. Sort of. I'm flying blind. I'm not sure what's happening next, or I tried to get all my bases covered for the launch and trying to do what I can to keep up with it. But yeah, it's a totally new experience for me. So it's great though. I had a good time with it.
I mean, the great news is that you funded in 2 hours. So right there, everything else is gravy.
Yes, it is. And this isn't any kind of false humility here. I was shocked that it did that well, that fast. I really was. I thought I'd have some, my parents and maybe an uncle, funded, pledge for it. And it ended up doing really well, and it kept going from there. And so, yeah, I was really excited about that.
I'm very pleased to let the entire world know that I finally was the #1 backer of a Kickstarter.
Yes.
And it was this one. I felt so good about it.
After all this time, you finally got #1?
I finally got #1. That email hit my inbox and I was like, boom. And I was like, holy crap, was I #1? And it took a minute to like figure itself out, but I was.
I've never been.
Yeah, that was crazy because no sooner did I press the button to launch, I went and checked, and I had 4 backers right away, and I saw Stu Horvath in the #1 spot. So that was cool. That was cool seeing that.
So why don't you tell us about the game?
Yeah, so Void the Frontier. It's a card game. It's a competitive card game. The main mechanic of it is set building, and you are trying to build sets of different types of specimens. There's 4 different types of. I call them specimens because it's a term that refers to all 4 types of things that you can find and build sets with. So there's tablets, idols, fossils, and monoliths. And those are all the specimens that you're looking for. It's fairly straightforward in its mechanics. I built it off the bones of Monopoly Deal. If anybody has played Monopoly Deal, it's funny. It's the card game version of Monopoly, and I don't like Monopoly, but Monopoly Deal is really easy and quick, and my wife and I break it out all the time. And so I thought, you know what? If I'm going to have a game that really focused on my artwork, I wanted the mechanics of it to be simple, and I thought that was a good kind of starting point. And so I used those mechanics and then built upon that. There's a couple other things that are thrown in there that make the game a little more meaty. But it's fairly simple, and it's a fairly quick play too. I would say around a half hour to an hour. The main thing about it is it's really art forward, because I'm not a game designer. Well, I suppose I could add that to my resume now.
Safe to say.
But yes. But first and foremost, I'm an artist. I'm a fine artist at that too. So I work quote unquote traditionally, which means charcoal drawing and oil painting. And I was really trying to figure out when the lockdowns hit in 2020, I was really trying to figure out different ways. I refer to them as delivery systems to get my artwork out there and have people interact with the artwork. I started with the booklets, so these are kind of based on my zines that I came out with, the lore of it anyway. And yeah, I just thought it would be a cool way for people to interact with the artwork. So they're on larger cards, they're tarot sized cards, and most on the specimen cards, most of the card is the image. So in that way, they're almost like little mini art prints.
They really do work that way. The first time I put this on the table, people were just like, "Oh God," because it was like a new game, and like everybody hates to learn the rules of a new game.
Yeah.
But like as soon as like they saw the cards, they were like, "Holy whoa!" Like they wanted to play just to like interact with the cards. And I think that was like a major way to soften the audience and then keep them coming back, because the art is really compulsive, I think, in the way you want to make sense of it.
Yeah, yeah. And the good news is so you played with a prototype. There's going to be, I would say, maybe twice as much art in the game.
Ah, that's so good.
Now, yeah. So there's going to be more images in there.
There are definitely card images in the Kickstarter that are not in my deck. So that's cool.
Right. Yeah.
I want to talk more about the art in a minute. I do think it's interesting that we had likened the game to Con of Cons, which is a RuneQuest based Chaosium game, which is like you're basically trying to accumulate cows before going bust. The cards make you go bust. And then we were kind of equating it to an old classic game called Heimlich and Company, which is about sussing out spies, but they have really good, there's a little expansion that has like cards that you could use to screw everybody over, and that you have the screw over cards. And it seemed like such like such a clear combination of those two games.
Wow.
But but it wasn't. I think that's super interesting because because those were the games that we kind of played and were our touchstones. That's sort of what we made Void the Frontier into in our heads. It's
I've never played either one of those games, so I should probably check them out.
Yeah, for Void the Frontier too, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, second edition. Yeah.
So the art though is like and we've talked about this a lot, me and you.
Yeah, we have.
This is all sort of a larger world building project for you.
It is, and I gotta say, Stu, before you move on, I would say you have had a bigger hand than maybe you think you have in the development of this through the booklets and through the game with our, we've talked a little bit about it, and yeah, you were an influence on that stuff.
So weird.
You're an influencer, Stu. He said it.
I'm just this guy talking. I'm just running my mouth. I don't know. I'm glad it worked out for you though.
Yeah. It's cool. Yeah, it was good advice.
The art is stunning, though, I gotta say, and the transfer, because you do everything so hands-on. It's often, I think, lost in the interpretation when you have such a brilliant, evocative piece of art, and you have to put it onto like a piece of paper or a card or something. Like, there's always that moment where it kind of loses dimension in a way. Whereas, like these cards, like everything that you have is jumping off of these cards. And
good. I'm glad to hear that.
Just as like vibrant and like eye-catching as they are, when you post the stuff, and it just looks good. So I was very, very happy to see that. Like, I knew the quality was gonna be awesome, but it's very nice to see that you don't lose any of the intensity of the art by putting it down to a different medium than it was created on.
Yeah, and that is tricky to do, especially since they are traditional pieces. They're not digital pieces. And so taking a photo and transferring them over, it is kind of tricky business to do that and still try to keep the physicality of it, particularly with the way I paint. Is some of my, Stu has one of my paintings. They are quite physical. There's a lot of texture going on in them. And I would hope that can come through in the actual cards and not get lost. So I'm glad to hear that.
The painting is that of yours that I own is right outside my office door, so I walk by it literally multiple times a day. And usually in the afternoon when the light is right, I can see it cuts across the edges of the painting, and you can see just how much like paint and texture there really is in that thing. And it's something that I think about a lot with your work because it's just so texture forward.
Yeah, that's cool. You're not sick of it yet, huh?
No, no, no. My son was really psyched to learn that we were talking to you today on the podcast. He's like, maybe one day I'll meet him. I was like, maybe.
Oh, cool. Yeah. If I ever get down that way, whenever you have those, or the geek, is it geek free? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always thinking to myself, man, what's it? 3.5 hours down there. Could I pull it this time? And it doesn't end up working out, but one of these days is going to happen.
We'll take you to all the good spots to eat, buddy.
Oh, buddy.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited. I'd be excited for that.
So specifically the art though, and I guess the larger project. Before we get into the art, I know I keep putting it off. But why don't you speak a little bit about what the world of the frontier and kind of how you envision that a little bit. I know you like to keep it a little cryptic and open to
Sure.
interpretation, but
Yeah, I would say I'd say less cryptic and more sort of close to the vest. Like
mm,
I'm not necessarily trying to shroud it in like a coded feel. It's more of an extremely slow burn of the reveal of stuff. If you're talking about the lore,
yeah.
so I mentioned before that I consider myself a fine artist, not an illustrator. That's more of just a category assignment that I give myself more than anything else. But a lot of that has to do with the paintings are very much first and foremost. That's what I do. The image is what I do. And then after I do these images, then I kind of in retrospect go back and say, okay, what are these about? What's going on here? Where did this come from? With the lore of the frontier, I did that, but then I sort of reached back to all of my formative influences when I was younger, and kind of grabbed those and smashed them together into a ball, and then that's it. It sort of kind of made itself after doing that. So, heavy metal, role playing games, paleontology, trucker culture. So I grew up in the West. I grew up in Utah and the northern part of Utah. Well, Salt Lake City, but I had a family friend that lived in Idaho Falls who was a truck driver, and I just remember growing up and going through all that Snake River Plain where there's just total open land, and there's nobody on the roads but truck drivers, right? So it's kind of that with dinosaurs, with paleontology, with heavy metal, kind of cosmic horror ish. The alien, what is it? What's it called? The space jockey. The
Oh
space
yeah, yeah,
jockey
yeah.
set. Yeah, the space jockey set piece. That's really sort of a high watermark for me in establishing this idea of something ancient that we don't really know a whole lot about. And because we don't know a whole lot about it, and because it's otherworldly and maybe very, very old, it sort of produces its own kind of fear, but not like an overt fear. It's sort of like the fear of the unknown kind of thing. And so I took all of these influences that I had and sort of mashed them together to come up with this idea of, like I said, I grew up in the West. So we have this frontier of wide open land. The frontier is right up against this impassable chaos area that I called void. It's a very generic word, but I didn't want to get really too specific about it. And so I call it void. And by the way, this is maybe a little nitpicky, but I don't say the void. I just say void. So anything that you would say about space, just replace it with void. We don't say we're traveling through the space, right? We say we're traveling through space. So I try to keep it that way because to me, it's almost like it operates like space. It's space exploration, sort of, except for it's terrestrial. So I have this idea of this network of people living on the frontier. And there's these people that I refer to as freighters, which are essentially truckers. I mean, that's what they are, is truckers. And they travel into this chaotic land to dig up these specimens that, there's scientists that study them, but they're not really exactly sure what they are. And they bring them back. Now, in Void the Frontier, in the card game, they bring them back illegally and sell them illegally. But in the overall lore, they can do it on the books or off the books. But for the game specifically, they do it off the books. But yeah, so there's a lot of sort of Western, but not Western in the sense of like the Wild West. It's more of like the trucker West, is kind of the feel that I'm going for with that. So yeah, does that sort of lay it out?
Makes complete sense. Absolutely.
Okay.
So it's interesting that the idea of void and space and the lack of I think like having looked through having read the three zines that you did, which are all great and wonderfully illustrated, and
Thank
folks
you.
should buy them too. I think that the easy comparison is Roadside Picnic and
Absolutely.
what the heck is Stalker is the name of the movie?
Stalker's the name of the movie, and I believe there's video games, aren't there?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of like the easy comparison, but like you mentioning outer space, like every time I think about it, and I only read the story recently, but William Gibson's Hinterlands, where there's like this gate where alien artifacts keep coming out, and like human culture basically develops around them, trying to figure out ways to use these artifacts in a cargo cult kind of way to the betterment of humanity. But they periodically send people through, and then they come back ruined. And it's just like this really, really super enigmatic story. And I think that also fits in really well with your overall lore. And it's just something that I bring to it that feels right. And I think that's sort of speaks to the coolness of the project and the openness of it in that, like, when I use the word cryptic, I was sort of alluding to this idea that like there's still you definitely have a definite authorial kind of vision, but there's room in there for me to bring my own stuff and set it down,
Right, yeah. Yeah, you've mentioned that story before. I feel like because like you say, Roadside Picnic and Annihilation is the other one that's sort of an easy parallel. And I've read both those books, but I have not read Hinterland, so I should probably check that out.
It's a short story in Burning Chrome. It's great. It like there's so many really good, like it's mostly like the sprawl stories, and they're great. But like I wound up loving this weird space story even more, and I wish you would go back to it. It's great. But now we can talk about the art. And you mentioned Alien. And it was interesting when we were talking about your art at the table with the game, and Giger's Biomechanicals immediately came up. And it was just like such like an immediate thing for everybody. Some other stuff got kicked around. I don't remember exactly what, but like everybody was really impressed with everybody. Like the more the people looked at it, the more they couldn't really pin it down. Like the Geiger thing is sort of like right there on the surface, just because there's the gradient, right? Because like it's hard to differentiate what's organic and what's like mineral or fossil or mechanical. There's like all these different little things in there, and all of the objects become what is it. But then that night, that same day, you had happened to post on Instagram a picture of you were in some valley in Utah.
Yeah.
And it was just like, well, that's where the paintings come from. Like, it's just so obviously clear, like seeing that landscape, that's void.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. The funny thing is, you mentioned Giger or Geiger. Is it Giger? I never know.
Yeah, my
heard
inclination is Geiger, but then somebody corrected me years ago and said Giger. So I feel like I should say Giger, but I often accidentally just fall back to Geiger.
Yeah, and for some reason Giger doesn't feel right coming out. Like it sounds weird coming out.
Sounds like
Geiger
a little tyke.
like
and I mean, he was a weird little guy, so maybe.
Yeah. No, the Giger thing. I get that. Quite a bit. If you look at my work, you can see it. Less of the mechanical part of biomech, but it's definitely there. The funny thing is, I was never really a big fan of his artwork. Now, the space jockey set piece, that was what I was a big fan of. But his actual airbrush paint, like, don't get me wrong, he's a master, he's a great artist, incredible. And of course, he can't not have an influence on what I do, but I was never like the biggest fan of his stuff. There are other artists in that similar vein. If you've ever heard of Zdzislaw Bechinsky, A lot of dark artists will know who that is because he's in that genre. He's up there with Giger, but he was a little bit more of an influence on me. But it's funny you mentioned the Utah thing too, because so I did grow up in Utah and actually did not visit southern Utah growing up. And the picture you saw on Instagram is from Capitol Reef. It's over by Arches and Moab, if anybody's familiar with the area. So I'm sure indirectly that had an influence, but in retrospect, when I go back there twice now in the last couple of years, I've been to Capitol Reef National Park. It's beautiful. Anybody who's in the area should definitely go check it out. But I always end up I tell myself I'm not going to do this, but I always end up leaving with 500 or 600 reference photographs because I don't know what's going on. There's some sort of erosion that happens with the red rock that creates this weird bony like lattice structure in the rock, and it's really fascinating. And I mean, I could just look at it all day. So yeah, it less directly, but it definitely like creeps its way in there, and more so now that I go there more.
It was just so funny because we were like folks were tossing around artist names, and I was just like, hold on, guys, and I threw the phone down, and everybody was just like, holy crap. And like it's strange to refer to like a known established national park as otherworldly, but like it's so weird looking. Like
it is, yeah.
It just doesn't make sense in the same way that a lot of your paintings don't make sense. Like
right, yeah. Here's a little Easter egg for you too. On my video on my Kickstarter, the video, and when I first say void, it sort of pans across this sort of washed out image. That's actually a photograph, a manipulated photograph from Capitol Reef. Yeah.
How often do people drop you a line asking if your art is AI generated?
It wasn't a thing until, it's silly to say, but it wasn't a thing until it was a thing. Like I had this aesthetic before anybody knew, well, not anybody, but before AI sort of dropped on the art scene, I was developing this aesthetic. And if you look at a lot of my work, 2018, 19, 2020, before any of that dropped, it's there. It's already there. That was sort of my aesthetic. When Midjourney dropped, I actually did experiment a little bit with it for a couple of months, like right when it first dropped. And I did that just curious, getting reference and stuff like that. But that's it. And then I haven't done it since then. But yeah, now I do. When I started running ads for this Kickstarter, I had people commenting on the ad like, is this AI generated or is it actual art? Somebody doing art, or are you just what did they call it? Like a master prompter or something. I can't remember what they use. Yeah, it was something like that. And I said, no, like these are actual physical pieces of art that I painted in real life. So yeah, I do get that from time to time now. It all of a sudden started getting asked if it was, particularly when I started the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do get that from time to time, and I have to let people know, like, no, this is what I do actually. I mean, not to say, I'm not saying anything about digital art, but not only are they not AI, they're not even digital art. They're physical paintings that I'm, taking out paint and painting with a paintbrush. So,
and that is sort of the quietly most impressive thing about this whole project, is that all of these, how big is on average are the original paintings for these?
They do range actually quite a bit. I would say on the most number of things, I have probably 8 or 9 that are about 32 inches by 18 inches. So just shy of 3 feet high.
Wow.
I have a good number of them that are about 19 inches high. I have one in particular that's 5 feet high. So it's quite a big piece. Actually, I have a couple that are close to that big. And then I do have a smattering that are more on the 8 by 10 range, but just a couple. But most of them, I would say, are between 2 and 3 feet, 2 and 3 feet ish, somewhere around there.
And it's all either oil or charcoal.
Yes.
How long does it take for your average oil painting to dry?
That's I mean, that's the question that every artist hates to hear. In fact, I know some artists that got so sick of hearing that question that they have like a clock in. They have like a stand. What do you call them? They clock into work. They hit the timestamp and then start on a painting just so when somebody drops that question, they don't have to hem and haw. They can just say, "Oh, it's 18 hours or whatever." But the average oil painting, and even then, it's a difficult question to answer because, I mean, it's like an iceberg. What you see is a part of it, but a lot of times, more than half of the work that's put into it is all previs stuff. It's I'll do a lot of photo bashing. I make my own with a lot of this stuff. I'll make my own maquettes. So I have clay and cardboard and things like that at home that I sort of really crudely bash together just to take photo reference and light reference. I mentioned I'm not a digital artist. I do use digital tools. I use Procreate in particular. Bring that into Procreate, bash it with some other textures, paint over the top of it until I get this workable maquette. And all this is, I'm spending a certain amount of time. Like I said, sometimes it's more than half the time of the total painting is taken on this before I even get to the actual painting. Other times not. It's a little quicker and it flows a little more easily. But man, it's really difficult to answer the question of what an average. It's easier for me to answer the charcoal drawing. I can do those in about a day or two. I can bust one of those out depending. But sometimes you get working on a piece and it becomes this sort of sunk cost thing where it's like, man, it's not getting to where I want it to, and you end up taking 2 steps backwards before you take a step forward, and it's really difficult for me to answer that, and I feel bad because it's one of these things that, like, on the business side of art, I should know more of that. So when I'm talking to people, and invariably that's the question that most people want to ask is, how long did this take you? That I could answer that better. The funny thing is sometimes they're impressed. Like, I don't know what they're going to be impressed more, if it took not that long a time, or like if I say, oh, this took me 2 hours, and then be impressed by that, or if I say it took me 100 hours and they're impressed by that. Like, it's hard to know which one they're going to be impressed by.
I think that I think both probably. I think that there's like an inflection point at some point. But what I really wanted was this exact answer, was you struggling to explain just how big an undertaking the art creation was. And I think that that's something that it's easy to kind of forget in terms of the way so many game products are produced. Especially with digital art, that if somebody comes in with quote unquote traditional techniques and creates a body of art for a deck of cards, how work intense that is, and how much more special the end product is because of that. Just because these are a whole collection, a whole portfolio of physical works of varying sizes, some larger than my kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. And I've actually, while you were having this conversation, I did the math. I figured it out. I know exactly how long it takes. It's a lot longer than putting a prompt in on a computer.
Yeah, that's a good answer. In fact, that'll be my go-to answer from now on.
There you go.
There you go, man. We don't mess with AI art around these parts. No, sir. Well, very cool. So Void the Frontier. By the time you hear this episode, dear listener, you have 9 days left to back Void the Frontier on Kickstarter. So I figured, since we're at the go-home point of this episode, Tyler, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about the tiers that you're offering? Because you're offering some pretty cool stuff here, and some stuff that's like a little more, I would say, wildly impressive than your average Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So take it away.
Yeah, I don't do so with the reward tiers. I noticed there's a lot of people, when they run a project, there's always like a PDF, like a digital only, and that's not really something that I could or wanted to attempt to do with this. So I tried to build in some smaller reward tiers if somebody didn't want to quite get the game. I do have a sticker. That's the very bottom reward tier. It's $4. But I did come up with a play mat. So if anybody's familiar, with playing, Magic the Gathering or anything like that. I didn't even know this was a thing until this year. But when I saw people using them, I thought, hey, that might be kind of cool to have a play mat that was based on the game. So it's essentially texture from one of my paintings, and it's got my logo on there. It says Void the Frontier. It's great for playing any other kind of card game, as well as my card game. And then I have the game. You can get the game with the mat. And then I have a tier that are prints that come with the game, and you can't get the prints any other way than backing this particular level. But there are 4 prints. Now I do have a stretch goal that if I meet that, if I get 40 out of the 50 slots available, I'll throw in another print, so people will get 5 prints instead of 4. But they're prints on it's actually a zine size, so it's 5.5 by 8.5 on a really nice 18-point soft touch paper. And these are limited to 50. And on the back, it says Void the Frontier. It has info there, and then it has a number out of 50. So I hand number and sign each one of these prints. And if you back that level, you get a pack of 4 of those along with the game.
They are all deeply unsettling, verging on upsetting images.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
They seem gooier than the yeah.
Gooier.
They make me upset. It is.
Gooier.
No,
That's high praise,
is a good
by
thing.
the way.
Yeah, I don't remember having any centipedes in there.
Ah!
But
Ooh, why would you?
Yeah, but no, it's what's great. Like, so I did proofs of these, and it's funny. We set all these proofs out for a lot of different images actually, and my wife and I went through them, and we handpicked these 4 because we thought they went really well together. But yeah, it's funny that you say that. They're particularly unsettling images. But yeah, so there's that reward tier, and then there is a tier that you can get 2 games if you'd like. I did have add-ons. I had two original paintings as an add-on, and they both went right away. So those are not available anymore.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, because I've never seen that before. Like, with this amazing art that you have, we've been talking and gushing over it for the last almost hour about how impressive the art is, and how it is so real. I've never seen anyone, people they've offered, oh, it's an original sketch, or it's like, oh, it's my work in progress shot. Like, the fact that you actually ponied up 2 of these paintings is amazing, because now this is, 2 people who have a true piece of fine art.
Yeah, and I'm going to
in their homes.
Craft the frames and char them. I do this charred surfacing to the frame, so I'm going to handcraft those myself before sending those paintings out. So I'm going to have fun doing it too.
So, folks, Void the Frontier is the real deal. It is something I think, even if you buy it and it sits on your shelf for a while before you actually get it to the table to play, it's going to be something you're going to truly enjoy looking at and enjoying. It's visually striking, and yeah, a lot of it makes me uncomfortable. Like Stu, like I see some of these pictures and I'm like, all right, this is not the monster I want to die by, but it's very, very cool. 9 days left on Kickstarter. There'll be links in the show notes, and yeah, definitely check out Void the Frontier.
I have to say real quick, I don't think I emphasized this enough in the midst of the, like, the regular episode, but like, holy, I played this game and it's super fun. It's fast. It's fast paced. It has a lot of different like ways to kind of approach your strategy, and ways to screw over your friends and not screw over your friends. It's fun and fast, and is sure to become a regular rotation game at your table, I'm sure.
Well, hell yeah. Well, Tyler, it's been very cool to have you on the show tonight. Where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me on my website at tylervanceart.com. I'm on Instagram at TRV. Those are my initials, Tyler Robert Vance. It's not Trevor. A lot of people read that as Trevor Art, which is fine. I don't blame them, but I've had that handle forever, so I'm keeping it. But it's TRVART is my Instagram. And can I just say really quickly, this has been especially cool because I believe that I started listening to VRPG. It must have been maybe the 3rd or 4th episode ever, and I've listened to everyone ever since, and plus before that too. So it's really cool to be on the show.
Dude, thank you so much, man. That's awesome.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, especially because we're coming up on 7 years
Oh my
on July
God.
7th.
That's crazy.
Ah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was a lot skinnier at the start of the show. Well, this has been another amazing episode of the Vintage RPG podcast in the storied 7-year history of the show. Stu, where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me at vintagerpg.com, where all the posts that you're used to from Instagram are now posting on my own site. You can sign up for my newsletter, and you can check me out at Kara, the new art social media platform that hopefully catches on because it's pretty cool. And I'm at Vintage RPG there too.
Folks, we're just trying to stay ahead of the AI curve. We're just doing our best to keep supporting real art and fighting the good fight and not having our stuff being stolen, scrubbed, or used to teach Skynet
How to kill us.
how to paint. Yeah, seriously. Jesus Christ. You can find me across the internet at John McGuire RPG. I'm actually trying to post more. I'm actually trying to do more things. I am starting a weekly 3-2-1 action RPG game every Tuesday night for the month of July. We're going to be doing some giveaways every night. We have everything you need to play, including free PDF rulebooks. I just want to turn people onto the game. I realized, which is on me, because I kind of just got so deep into writing. I was like, oh, maybe I should teach people what the game is all about and how to play the game. So Tuesday nights in July, if you follow us on social media, you'll find what you need to do to sign up. I'd love to have you at my table. So please come roll dice with me. It's fun. If you like the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Your reviews really do help other listeners to find us. And if you really like the show, why not become a patron? Patreon.com/vintagerpg. We have a pretty cool Patreon. We got a behind-the-scenes look at everything that Stu's working on. We got a behind-the-scenes look at the stuff I'm working on. At the $5 tier, I run a different RPG every single month that you can get in on and play. At the $10 tier, you could play in my game, and even better than that, Stu has it's been going on, what, a year now?
A little over a year, yeah.
West March's campaign going on that you can drop in at, and you may or may not make it, but it's the friends you make along the way and the monsters that don't eat you. But it's a good time. I know tons of people who swear by it, so highly recommend the West Marches campaign. We have a early release episode every week at some point between Friday and Saturday, depending on when we record it. For as little as $1 a month, you get to hear the episodes early, and we may be having some guests come to run some games for our patrons. Stu and I are in some talks right now, coming up with some cool ideas to give a little more bang for your buck over at our Patreon, patreon.com/vintagerpg. Also, very important, vintagerpg.com. Stu has been working his ass off for the last 8 years, making an amazing Instagram place where you can go and you can see all the books, hear all the things he's got to say and write about it that led up to Monsters, Aliens, and Holes in the Ground, which you could buy where books are found now. But go check out vintagerpg.com. You can actually look at all the pictures Stu takes on the big screen. A lot more in-depth, a lot more fun. And also, we don't have to worry about the fucking algorithm. So vintagerpg.com. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dega West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.